Welcome back to the morning show on ETV. We're moments away before we get to 7 o'clock. And of course, we're right into the swing of December. Now, when we get into this time of the year, it's important to ensure that we make financial savvy decisions and look after our money over the festive season. And this morning, right now, I'm joined by the Managing Director at Doshguide, Rory Brachner, to share with us some tips of using money wisely throughout this festive season. Rory, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to the morning show.
Thanks, Kgosi. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is a very hectic conversation. It's a very real conversation, and I think it's a conversation we need to have every single year leading up to this time and while we find ourselves in the festive season. But before we talk about how a person can be able to make better decisions, let's understand the landscape that we're in, or rather the economic landscape that we're in, and how that influences the consumer spending and the financial decisions during this Black Friday season, festive season, back to school shopping period.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's be honest, this year, 2023, has been a tough year for South African consumers. You've got inflation being higher than it's been in many years. The economy looks like it's sort of slowing down to about 1% growth rate this year, which is, also lower than it's been in several years. So it all adds up to like a bit of a crunch for South African consumers. And the data so far is showing that that's the case for this Black Friday and for this festive season in terms of the spending patterns. I saw some interesting information that came out of Takealot released some information, who are obviously the biggest e-commerce platform in South Africa, which reflected a trend that consumers now, this Black Friday compared to the previous one, spending money on just essential monthly goods as opposed to luxury goods like electronics. The top three things that they sold in this Black Friday was Coca-Cola, toilet paper, and brandy. So I think that kind of tells you a little bit about the patterns of South Africans spending in Black Friday. It's not on luxury goods and electronics, it's on just basic household essentials.
And I mean, that says a lot about the spending culture that we're finding. I mean, there's an article that I was reading not too long ago speaking about a 4% year-on-year decrease in the spending over the festive season, and even a cut in the food budget and those essential items. So what advice do you have for individuals that are trying to navigate these financial challenges that they may be experiencing over this festive season and back to school spending that we experience in South Africa?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess, we do a lot of work with clients. We help people with, assisting them with their sort of financial, decisions. And we have a bunch of financial advisors that do that. And I think the key thing for us is that it doesn't start on Black Friday. It's more of a long-term view. We sort of take an annual view or an even longer-term view of assisting clients with their personal finance. I think if you're trying to plan around your finances in December, I think you kind of missed the boat a little bit. I think, a good, solid financial planning is really about starting early, planning ahead as much as possible, and building also a sort of solid foundation around your planning. It's not just about December or Black Friday or the festive season. It's about having a really good, solid financial strategy for you and your family with really clear goals. And if you have those sort of clear goals in place where you are really clear about, I want to retire at a certain age, I've saved enough, in terms of education for my kids, I've got a bit of an emergency fund going. If you've covered all those bases and you've got that good strategic financial plan in place, the sort of micro decisions around what to spend on in the festive season and how much to spend becomes a lot. Yeah, once you get that sort of more high-level strategy in place.
Yeah, and I mean, what you're saying is so true that one should have prepared before getting into this time. But let's say hypothetically one hasn't prepared and they're finding themselves in the festive season. They're trying to just make better decisions, especially when it comes to those impulsive shopping during the holiday season. What are some of the ways that we can deal with that? Because it looks like there's a sale everywhere and it looks like there's a special everywhere, but without letting these purchases haunt us into the new year or haunt them into starting 2024.
Yeah, exactly. I think the first thing is that, to answer the question, is this an actual special? Because, there's a lot of studies now that are showing that actually when you're seeing 30% off or 50% off, It looks very enticing, but often that's not even the lowest price that the product has been in this year or the last 2 years. So there's a lot of great tools out there that that you can actually use to price track. So if you do a bit of research and you figure out, you know, and you can just Google, you know, price tracking tool for a given product or for a given platform, and you can find some great tools that show you what the historical price of that item has been over the last year or two, and you'll be surprised sometimes, you know, that 50% off is not necessarily 50% off. So that's one thing to remember. The other thing that I think I apply in life in general, but not just for, you know, impulse buying, but is sleep on it. You know, like if you see something in the shops that you're like, I really want that, take a moment. If you can't sleep on it because the special's today, go for like a coffee. Just take a moment and just really think about, is this something that you really need? I saw a great quote yesterday that said that, you know, 50% off on something you don't need is still 100% wasted. So, you know, think about, do you really need this thing?
It's a very good point, because I was just about to ask you, the special is ending today. I don't have time to go sleep on it, but maybe that coffee might do me very well. Before we wrap up, we wrap up our time together this morning, Rory, a big talking point, especially during the festive season, is credit cards. It's the do it now and sort it out later idea that it just feels like you're parking it to the side. So it almost feels like the wise thing to do financially, because you're not using the actual money now. How can you guide us through that and ensuring that we don't fall into this trap, even under the guise of, I'm not paying the money actually now, I will be paying it in bits and pieces over the next couple of months?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, this is not a great, people don't really want to hear this, but like credit cards are just not an ideal thing to use really for sort of what we call bad debt. So you have good debt is like not a bad thing in general. Like there is certain things that you can buy with debt that actually improves your net worth, like assets like a house, or you can invest in education. But financing or using debt to finance sort of luxury goods or electronics that depreciate really quickly in value is what we call bad debt, and it's just really not a good idea. You know, when we talk about credit cards, the one thing that I always find interesting is this: there's a lot of studies on how people use credit cards. And wealthy people use credit cards, they pay the balance off in full each month. So in other words, they don't pay a cent in interest rates, but they got all the benefits if there's cashback rewards or if there's travel rewards. And so actually, wealthy people are a net loss for credit card companies. And where are they making their money is with less wealthy people who will pay, you know, 6,000 Rand for a TV that actually costs 4,000 Rand because they finance it over sort of 2 years.
I want to just jump in. I want to jump in here quickly, because I think there's something else that's also very interesting. We're out of time, but I'm going to try to squeeze it in as best as possible. Outside of the credit card conversation, and I think what you're saying is so important, we're also seeing a rise of these buy now, pay later, pay flex, pay just now, which is something that we've seen kind of skyrocketing over the last couple of months. And that in itself may be intriguing to a number of people who might say, I can't qualify for a credit card, or I can't afford to do a credit card, shortly, briefly. So how would you advise one to navigate that space specifically?
Yeah, awesome. It's really easy. Work out what the total cost for that item is. So if it says 12 months times 500 Rand a month, do it on your phone, 12 times 5, look at that price and compare it to what it would cost just to pay cash, and decide, is it worth it? What I'm ending up paying, is it going to be worth it?
Yeah, that's very good. No, thank you so much for that one, Rory, because we've seen a rise of this, and I think it's more things that make it tempting for us to go ahead and spend more than what we've planned to do. But thank you so much for guiding us and leading us through this conversation.